In this video, we're going to take a look at SwiftUI, Apple's exciting new declarative framework for creating UI for all of its various platforms. We're going to start making a very small Pokedex that'll have some minor features that we can build on later as we learn more about SwiftUI. Let's get started. For the best experience with SwiftUI, you're going to be wanting to use the latest beta of Catalina, and if you're targeting any of the iOS devices or tvOS or watchOS, you'll want to be on 13. You're also going to need Xcode 11 beta, whatever the latest one is, currently beta 2. So make sure you're on Catalina, make sure you've got the latest Xcode, and you'll be good to go. We'll start inside of Xcode by creating a single view app project. I'm going to name it Pokedex because we're going to be working with Pokemon data. Make sure you have SwiftUI checked underneath language of Swift and hit next and finish setting up your project. And you'll land inside of the SwiftUI editor. There's a preview on the right and code on the left, and they're linked together. When you select one, the other will highlight in both directions. It's really pretty neat, and these stay perfectly in sync with each other as you make changes. So if I change this from Hello World to Hello SwiftUI, you'll notice that the preview updated to say Hello SwiftUI. If I command click and go into inspect, and inside of the inspector, I make some changes to the text here, perhaps to say Hello SwiftUI Inspector, you'll notice that when the text updates in the preview, it also wrote the code over on the left. This is super powerful and it extends to all features within SwiftUI. Briefly, I wanted to preview some of the data we'll be using later in this project. You can get the sample files down below in the description, but we've got a JSON file with all of the data for our Pokemon, the first 9 in the Pokedex, as well as images inside of an asset collection. We have a model file that uses Codable to be able to decode from that JSON file correctly. And then we have a Pokedex.swift file that instantiates a Pokedex from the Pokedex.json file that we'll use to populate our UI and see what we can do with SwiftUI. But first, let's take a tour of what we can do here inside of SwiftUI. I mentioned that the text is in sync with the preview, and if we change this to Bulbasaur to get us into that Pokemon feeling mood, you'll see that the preview updates there as well. Many of the visual properties of SwiftUI controls are handled through this Fluent interface called Modifiers. Here we're specifying that the font size should be title for our Bulbasaur text. We can also make this same change from the library. If you open up the library, there's a Modifiers tab. There's also a Views tab. But if we go to the Modifiers tab, you can search for font or scroll through that list to find it. And once you've found it, you can drag it out and drop it either into the code or onto the text element over in the preview. So I'll search for font. And when I drag it out here, you'll see that I can drop it in code in the same spot that we were just editing our text before, but I can also drop it directly on the text element itself. The default font here that it picked for us was title, and that's perfect for what we're going to use it for. Okay, now if I head back into the library and head over to Views, and this time search for text, or just find it from the list, and drag this out. This time I want to show you what happens in the preview with this. If I put it on the bottom, it asks me if I want to add a V-stack to add it below, or an H-stack to add it to the left, V-stack on the top, or H-stack on the right. We're going to drop it here on the bottom, and you'll notice in code that it's created a V-stack to wrap our text, and it's added the second text element that we just created inside of it. So I'm going to edit this text here, and we're going to add the types for Bulbasaur, grass, and poison. Now you'll notice that this layout is not quite ideal for what I'm trying to do, which is to make a list item for our Bulbasaur. What we can do here is we can specify the alignment. If I inspect, you can see that we can do this from the inspector, just like we did other things. And when I click on the leading alignment, it adds this .leading alignment to the V-stack, and things line up on the leading edge. Okay, we'll also set the font for the types here to be subheadline, and then I'll use another modifier called color to change the color of the font for the text for the types to gray to give it a slightly diminished look. Next, we'll add a thumbnail image for our Bulbasaur list item here by command clicking on VStack inside of the code and saying embed in HStack. So now we have a horizontal stack where items will be listed in order horizontally from left to right by default. So inside of the HStack, we're going to create an image for our Bulbasaur. The control that we'll use here is called image, and if you remember, we have an asset catalog where the images are named by number. So if we just pass in the string 1 here, it'll pull 1.png from our asset catalog. And that image is a little bit too big for our list item layout the way we have it right now. So if I go into here and inspect, you'll see that there is a section called frame down at the bottom. And if I specify a size here, you'll see that the frame around the image resizes. But you'll notice that the image itself doesn't resize. Images do not resize by default in SwiftUI, so we need to do something else. There's a modifier called image resizable, and that's the one that we want. So if we bring that out into our code and drop it where the image is located, just before the frame, and drop it here, we'll make our image resizable, and there it lands right into place. We'll just tweak it so it's a little bit bigger because now it's looking a little small. Okay, this is looking pretty good for a row, so let's create a new SwiftUI view to represent our row inside of a list that we'll create in a moment. We'll name it Pokemon Row. What we're going to do is we're going to take the H stack that we've been working on in the other file and bring its UI over to the row. Head back into the content view and copy out this H stack that we've been working on to this point and take it over to Pokemon Row and paste it in instead of the text that's there. Now you'll notice that the preview doesn't kick in because we've been making some major changes to the project. That's okay, we can click resume to get it working again. Speaking of the preview, let's take a look at what we can do with editing the preview to make it look more like a row. We'll set the preview layout for the preview to a fixed layout at 300 by 70. What's really neat about the preview system is that at debug time, you can take different looks at your controls without modifying how they're going to behave at runtime. So in this case, we're going to see what the row looks like at 300 by 70 so that we can get a feel for what it will look like inside of a list. This is the perfect time to start working with our actual Pokemon data. So up at the top of our Pokemon row struct, let's add in a Pokemon object. Now we need to pass it into the preview so that we can actually look at the preview. So here we're going to pass in the Pokedex index 0 Pokemon, which will be our Bulbasaur. So we're just passing in an instance out of our Pokemon Pokedex. Now let's just go through and edit all of the properties here. Our image, we're going to get that out of the Pokemon ID since they're named by their number. For the text that represents the name, instead of Bulbasaur here, we'll pass in Pokemon.name. And for now, we're going to get rid of the types because we're going to display those in the Pokemon detail view eventually, but it doesn't really make sense for now to show them in the list. And we've made some big changes, so let's resume that preview once again to get it back to working. And there's our Bulbasaur row, this time coming from our Pokedex instead of being hard-coded values. One neat feature in the preview is you can embed things inside of a group, and then you can see different views of the same thing. So if we duplicate our Pokemon row a few times, and then pass in different indices into the Pokedex, we can actually look at 1, 2, and 3 out of the Pokedex as they would look from the row. Pretty neat. You can also use this to vary text sizes and test things for dark mode. Now that we have a Pokemon row, let's make a Pokemon list. Create another SwiftUI view, and this time call this one Pokemon List. The first thing we'll do here is replace the default text here with a Pokemon row object, and we're going to pass in the same old Pokedex index 0 to get this tested, just to see if it's working here. In a moment, we're going to create a list from our Pokedex, and we'll know that it's going to work. Okay, there's our Bulbasaur once again. Creating a list is actually super simple, right? What we're going to do is we're going to embed this in a list, and boom, it's already a list. We've got 5 instances right out of the gate. Now, instead of just 0 through 5, we're actually going to create a list out of our Pokedex, and immediately we've got 9. And if we pass our Pokemon in, and then pass that current Pokemon object into the list, boom, it works. We've already got a list of our first 9 Pokemon that are represented in our JSON file. We're actually getting pretty close to something that functions as an app. We need to group this into a navigation view so we can put a title at the top and so that we can navigate into a detail for each of these Pokemon. Once we have that, we can specify the navigation bar's title, and I'm going to make that Pokedex. The functionality to enable navigation is super simple as well. We're just going to create a navigation button to wrap our Pokemon row. This takes a destination, and all the destination is a view. We can test this out very easily by just simply specifying that the destination view is a text field, and we'll pass in the current Pokemon's name. This will allow us to just test to make sure the navigation is working before we go ahead and create a detail view. So excellent. Now to test this, we need to actually put this into live mode. So click this play button down here at the bottom near the preview, and it'll put it into live preview mode. Now we can tap actually click on anything here and it'll navigate over, and you can see the Pokemon name is being displayed on the next screen as we expected based on what we passed in the destination. Notice that you get all of this animation and selection handling for free. We didn't have to code any of it. All right, excellent. Let's create one more view, and that's going to be our Pokemon detail view. We're just going to get started with this for now. We'll save editing this and making more features for future videos or Twitch streams. But for now, let's at least get something displaying inside of a detail so that we have a fully functioning master detail view. This Pokemon detail view is also going to need to take a Pokemon object since it needs to display one on screen. So we'll create one here at the beginning. Next, we'll pass it inside of the preview so that it has something to display here. We've been working a lot with Bulbasaur, so we'll work with Charmander on this one. Inside of the body, I'm just going to create an image this time. That's all we're going to display for now inside of the detail. And the image is just going to be the Pokemon ID as it was in the list previously, so we'll pass that in as a string. Resuming, we can see our beloved Charmander, isn't he cute, show up right in the middle of the screen. When we navigate to this screen, we're going to want to have a title that'll show the Pokemon's name in the title bar. So we'll set the navigation bar title to a text with the Pokemon name inside of it. This title won't show up right away, but I'll show you how you can make that happen here in the preview in just a moment. We'll also set the display mode to inline so it shows a little bit smaller at the top. Okay, heading back over to our list, we need to specify that our destination is the Pokemon detail, and we'll pass in the current Pokemon to the Pokemon detail view. If we head into live preview, once again, we can tap on one of our Pokemon, and you'll see that the Venusaur title shows up at the top, and we've got the image showing up right in the center, and all of our other Pokemon work just as we would expect them to. Coming back to that navigation bar title thing, in the preview, you can actually put the navigation view down here in the preview. It won't affect your current view, it just gives you a way to view what that would look like here inside of the preview if you did happen to have a navigation view on this screen. That's all we have time for today. I'm going to continue working on this over on my Twitch channel over at twitch.tv/chefbrent. So if you want to continue learning about SwiftUI, head on over there, and we'll post some of those videos back here. So if you're not currently subscribed to this channel, go ahead and do that now and hit the bell so you know when those go live. Till next time, I'm out of here.